stand up. Just for 30 seconds, stand up. I was sitting a long time. You can, okay, shake yourselves off again. Okay, let's get back to work. Yeah. Yeah, I too, I'm going to try to make this work, yeah. I'm looking at all these, also I'm seeing all these young faces out here. That makes me happy, because that's where change is going to come from. Not old guys like me, but all the young people out here. This is a great honor for me to be here with the esteemed minister and with our guests from the African continent who have worked so tirelessly in their lives. 24 hours, 7, they do this job. Not easy, any of this. I think the common denominator here is we're all human beings, isn't it? Every one of us here. And I know from my point of view, it seems like everyone is an immigrant or a refugee or a migrant. We've all moved. We spend lives moving. I'm looking at Tencho Gyatso here. It was our Tibetan friend from the International Campaign from Tibet. Our Tibetan community is in a diaspora all over the world from their beautiful homeland. They're experts in this. How do you move and be successful? Go to a new place and be successful. It's a talent, you know, when it comes from a deep place, and not every culture is able to do that. We've all moved, whether it was our parents or grandparents, generations before. Anna, you didn't know this, but actually I'm told I had 4 or 5 people on the Mayflower, which was the boat that left England for North America. And then there was a young boy, was the first Gere. I think it wasn't spelled the same way, but the first Gere was sent away, and there was some kind of a money issue, and an evil uncle sent him on a boat to America. He ended up in what is now Connecticut. But that's my lineage. And mostly Anglo-Saxon, and I'm told a little German, like a 2% German in there. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's a 2% German. So we all left, and our parents left, our grandparents, to make a journey in search of safety, of opportunity, dignity, or simply to look for a better future. Human history is in many ways the history of migration, of movement. It's a story of people adapting, building, contributing, and dreaming. And yet somehow in today's debates, we often speak about migrants, about refugees, as if they were different from us. I think the term I was actually given today, apparently the US government is calling aliens. Aliens, that's the latest. It had been vermin, now it's aliens. I'm deeply ashamed of this, I want you to know. They belong to another category of human beings, as if their hopes and fears and aspirations were somehow less legitimate than our own. The simple truth that we're all connected by movement, by our own humanity, by journeys that have come before us. When I heard about what was happening in the Mediterranean, it was the first time I went to Lampedusa and Sicily, which was the first place, of course, if you got a boat somehow from usually Libya. The closest you got to Europe was Lampedusa, and I made a point of going to those camps and seeing for myself. There was people from all over Africa. It was astonishing how the voyage that I had taken was not from one country. It was from many countries all over, and Syrians at that point, Middle Easterners that were in that camp, happy to be alive, unhappy to be in a camp, still looking for home somewhere. So a few years after that visit to Lampedusa, my wife and I were actually visiting friends in Italy, and a friend called us and said, "Did you know about this new law in Italy?" I said, "No." So there's a new law that makes it illegal to save people in the Mediterranean. Illegal to save people. I said, "No, that can't be true." And I made a few phone calls, and yes, it was true. A law that makes it illegal to help drowning people. As astonishing as that. For a Christian country, is this even imaginable? The image of that, the Christian image of Jesus saving people in the water. It's now illegal to save drowning people. So I couldn't believe that. It was not possible, but it was, and it was surreal. And there's a group we had been working with, which was Open Arms, based in Barcelona, that we had visited years before and were working with. It's a Spanish search and rescue operation and organization. It was started by Oscar Camps. His story is incredible, and if you've not heard of him, to look him up, I think it would inspire you. So I called them, and they said, "Look, yes, this is true, and right now there's a crisis. There's a boat, an Open Arms boat, about 20 miles off the coast of Lampedusa. They won't let it come in." And I said, "What can we do?" I said, "Well, you can go there. Oscar's going there. You can meet him." So I immediately got into a car, met him in Rome. We flew to Lampedusa. And yes, in fact, there were 120 people there that had been rescued from a sinking boat. Many had died in the process. The amount of suffering I wasn't aware of until I actually got on the boats. But we spent a day getting food, water, medicine, and making arrangements for a boat. This is a very long story, but in the end, the boat that we had, the guy said he couldn't do it. The secret police, the Italian secret police, came to him at midnight and said, "If you do that, we'll shut you down. You will not have a boat. You will not have opportunities. You will not work again." So we had to find another boat. And actually, and I don't think you know this story either, but we were looking for a boat. We had all this food. We had everything. And there was one tourist boat that was there in the harbor. And I went up to him, and he said, "Oh, my God, Richard." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Come here." And we went to the cockpit of the boat, and his cell phone was there, and there was an app on it. He had just been watching me give kind of a Buddhist lecture on this, about responsibility and empathy. And he said, "Of course you can use my boat." So we packed water and medicine and everything else onto the boat. And so we went out into the boat. It took us hours to get there, 25 miles out. We found the Open Arms boat. The ship was out there. And we came up to the boat, and there were 120, 130 men, women, children just sitting there on the deck of the boat. They had a tarp over them to keep them out of the sun. Mothers were holding babies. Children just sitting there. Young men were staring silently and with a darkness about them, just looking at the horizon. These faces were marked by exhaustion, fear, uncertainty, and yet somehow they're still carrying inside of them. You could see the vestiges of hope was still there. Barely, just barely, but the glimmer of it was still there. And the crew, extraordinary crew there, was doing everything possible to care for them, feeding them, comforting them, entertaining them the best they could. They had musical instruments and were passing it around just so everyone would be occupied with some sense of joy about them, trying to keep their spirits alive. I spent the full day there with them, talking with them, listening. I wanted to hear their stories. There was a young kid that spoke a lot of African languages there, and he was doing the translation for me. And actually, my son ended up on the boat the next day, who was 20 years old at that time, and he actually has kept up with several of these kids. One was this young kid who from Eritrea, who's in France now, finally got his way out. But they kept up a friendship. So each one of the stories that I heard there was extraordinary, as you can imagine. And many of them, especially from the women, hard to repeat. And I know some of them I haven't told anyone. I haven't told my wife. I haven't told anyone. They were kidnapped, abused, trafficked, passed from one militia in Libya to another. There's no central government there, so each area is this different militia. You have to go through the same process with each new militia as you're trying to get to the ocean, to a boat, hopefully a boat, and one that you won't die in on the way to Lampedusa, and then somehow getting to the rest of Europe. The men spoke of torture, forced labor, sold into slavery, many of them, extortions, families contacted and threatened for ransom money, unspeakable violence used as leverage, which I'm sure you know about. They get a cell phone, they'll find a relative, they'll cut off an ear talking to a relative in Europe and say, we're going to cut the nose off next if you don't send 500 euros. After surviving all that, they climbed into extremely overcrowded boats and set off into the sea. What I think struck me the most, the suffering for sure, but this determination that there was a place for them somewhere. This drive for a safe place is which an extraordinary thing in the human soul. I think it's a metaphoric one as well as a real one, us looking for home, a safe place. You know, from the Tibetan point of view, they looked for that home inside themselves and then expressed that outwardly in the world. But we're all looking for home still. And that never stops, I don't think, that search. I remember talking to one kid, and I asked him, would you go back? If you can't get in to Lampedusa, would you accept a boat taking you back? He said, absolutely not, I'd rather die. I'd rather die. I'm not going back into hell. I'd rather die. And that was the response, I would say. Everyone on that boat had the same feeling. What circumstances must exist in someone's life to go on a fragile boat into nowhere with only the vaguest expectation that you will survive and find that safe home? Migration is often discussed through stats, statistics, border policies, quotas, election campaigns from the bad guys especially, and naked racism, tool of manipulation. But before it's any of those things, it's a profoundly human story. This is about people. This is people. The human beings are like us. It's about dignity, survival, hope. This is not ultimately a political issue. And I don't see distinctions between things. We were talking about it before with one of the people I was doing an interview with. I don't see any difference between the spiritual, the political, the human, the social. It's all the same to me. Essentially, if we're coming from that acceptance of our core humanity, which binds us all together in this profound way, all the other stuff falls into place. It's all the same. How can you have politics without a heart? How's that possible? How can you have come up with a social system that doesn't come from that empathic impulse to be good and to witness the good in others and connect with that? As the Dalai Lama says, you know, if you want to have a good life, be good to others. Being compassionate to others. And that compassion feeds the goodness of your own life, obviously. We all know that. What do we do when another person is suffering, whether next door or thousands of miles away? All the great religions of humanity teach us the same lesson using different words, but it's all the same. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism. You help those who suffer. Help your neighbor. You love your neighbor. I don't know anywhere it says that if your neighbor is black or poor or gay or whatever it may be. I don't remember that in any of this literature. Love your neighbor. Every one of them. Not just those who look like you, who speak your language, not those who only share your passport, but those who need help. And that is what humanity in our own hearts demands of us. And that truth is we have the resources, we got it all. We got the knowledge, we have the ability, we have the technology, we have food, we have the water, we have it all. We have the capacity to do it because we're human. And we are innately empathic, and I do believe in that. That's the core of my optimism, is that we do feel, and we feel others' pain. You know, I was making a movie, I developed a movie and made a movie about a homeless guy, and I spent hours on the street making this movie. And it was the most extraordinary experience, a profound one in my own life, but I was in character enough that no one was seeing Richard Gere, they just saw a homeless guy. Another case of someone looking for home. It was a homeless guy on the street. And once I kind of trusted that they were only seeing a homeless guy, I was able to engage at a profound level what people were going through when they saw this homeless guy. The first thing was the empathy. They could see my suffering as a homeless guy. And then all these other profound things were coming up in them that I'm sure made them feel embarrassed and guilty. Is that, why should I give him my money? Right? Greed, you know. Why should I care about him? Well, I don't love everybody. I'm self-cherishing. And this myriad of those kind of selfish emotions coming up that kept them from the innate empathy, that first thing of, I get it. Man, you're on your ass right now. You are suffering. To me, that's the connection. We were talking about this before. If we all come from that place and don't then overlay the other things. We don't have the money. Why should I care? They're not really like me. My family is here. I keep it here within the front door and the back door in my apartment or my house. But outside of that is sort of family, but that's not my family. No, the whole thing is my family. It's so easy to go there. It's hard to build these barriers. So we have this innate compassion, and we can develop that into vast compassion. We have the intelligence, we have the capability to choose and act on that compassion. The people here have chosen that. We're going to act on that. We're going to do it. That's the difference. A lot of people say, well, you know, I'd like to, but I don't know what to do. You know, you do it. You do it. You just do it. It's easier to do it than not do it. Humanitarian assistance is necessary. Saving lives is necessary. Equally important are wisdom and insight. And if we want lasting solutions, we got to ask harder questions. And we're going to always have to seek deeper understanding of what's going on. And that's an unending process. Always looking deeper, always looking for, can we do it better? Is there a root cause that we haven't seen that we can attack and transform in some way? Why are people leaving? Why do they go? Why do they move? Why do so many feel that they have no future where they were born? Why an entire generation is willing to risk everything? And perhaps even more importantly, what role have we played in creating the conditions that drive those decisions? Because today's migration didn't emerge in a vacuum, of course not. Many of the countries from which people migrate today have histories deeply entwined with those of Europe and the West and America. I mean, we could go obviously into the stories of what America has done. For centuries, colonial systems extracted resources, abused tribal cultures, shaped political structures, redrew borders, influenced patterns of economic development, whose consequences continue to be felt today. Acknowledging that history is not about assigning guilt to current generations. No, it's about recognizing and understanding our responsibility and moving from there. We can't change history, but we can choose whether to ignore its consequences or help address them. So we can choose whether relationships between continents remain transactional and reactive or become genuine partners, building mutual respect, opportunity, and shared prosperity. The conviction of talking about this stuff led me to join forces with someone else. Because I can't do anything by myself. None of us can do anything by myself. So I looked around and said, well, who actually knows how to do this kind of thing? And Anna, who runs my foundation right here, found the Hertie School. And she described it to me, and I said, this is perfect. These guys are perfect. And I said, well, they are academic, I am not. They're systematic, I am not. They are scientific, I am not. So this is a perfect thing for me, you know, the emotional guy. And so we met. In fact, the room that we were just in today having lunch. And it was a fit. And not only were all those things true, that they were systematic, academic, and capable, and scientific, they were also really nice people. And they had big hearts. So I think it's the way that things can happen through these kind of partnerships. And a partnership isn't just here with these people, these extraordinary people, and the people in the front row here. It's everybody. We have press here. Press is a very important part of communicating these ideas. Obviously, the bad guys are very good at saying alien, vermin, rapists, dangerous, criminals, blah, blah, using this kind of language. There's another language, which is the language of compassion, of sanity, of help, of getting in touch with, you know, our real impulses, but also, yeah, the ability we can solve these things. You don't have to just dump people because you can't figure out what to do. We figured out how to do it. Human beings have extraordinary intelligence. We've solved so many things. This can be solved as well. So we've had all of these root causes, which is really what we're trying to find here. And I think this group is also, as the minister is doing, trying to do real things on the ground to help people in this moment. But of course, we want to reduce this, the need of people to move away. And how do you do that? You look at the root causes. Why are they moving? Why are they putting themselves in danger? So we have weak governance, we have lack of economic opportunity, conflict, climate pressures, corruption for sure, historical wrongs, human rights abuses, institutional fragility, educational disparities, land theft, demographic transformations. These are not really secondary issues, they're central. And for us to engage them in an intelligent, systematic way is really, really important. Our policies often prioritize short-term political objectives, demonizing over long-term solutions. European governments frequently focus on reducing arrivals rather than addressing root causes. Development assistance is more and more conditioned on migration control. Outsourcing border control to third countries becomes more important than institution building. We could go more and more into that area because it's really extraordinary. The solutions that Italy, for instance, came up with is they give hundreds of millions of dollars to the juntas in Libya to not let migrants leave the country. In the process, unintended consequences emerge, which is democratic institutions weaken, corruption grows, violence persists, and trust erodes. Human beings continue to move because of the conditions driving them have not changed, and this cycle, of course, benefits no one, them or us, not Europe, not Africa, not the Americas, and certainly not the migrants themselves. We really think there's a better way, and we intuitively think what that is, but this is going to take a while to really figure it out. It doesn't happen in one day or a week or a month or a year. This is a many-year process of finding a rigorous and trustworthy path forward to understand how state policies, including migration policy, border management, development cooperation, governance frameworks, and international partnerships interact with the deeper causes of migration to identify what works, to learn from success stories, but also from failures. Obviously, we know some success stories, we know a lot of the failures. We need to call that out and say, forget it. Violetta brought up some of them and just said they're failures. It doesn't work. No matter how much they say the lie over and over again, they don't work. So we have to challenge the assumptions and ultimately to propose better alternatives, grounded not in ideology, but in evidence, in science, not in short-term political gains, but in long-term human progress based on a basic goodness from all of us, connecting with the basic goodness in each one of them. We're in the beginning of the work now in Africa, but I just see that as a beginning point. Obviously, we have much to do from the American point of view in terms of the migration, refugees that are happening in South and Central America. It's very important to me personally, and it's important to looking at that in terms of the big picture. Migration does affect every continent on Earth. People move from Latin America to North America, from Asia to the Gulf, within Africa itself, as we were talking about, within Europe itself. Human mobility is a global reality. We begin in Africa because the continent is sitting there at that intersection. Many of the forces that are shaping the remainder of the 21st century are happening right here. And, I want to applaud Angela Merkel for what she did. I know she's carried a vast and heavy weight for allowing so many refugees here, but that was a courageous move on her part. And if it didn't work, it wasn't because the motivation was bad. So I do applaud her. I'm looking through this now. This has all been said. This is all this stuff. I think what it comes down to, I'm just looking through the rest of this stuff, is that no single government can make the big difference here. No person can. I can't. The minister can't. Hertie School can't. We can't. This is all in partnerships of like-minded communities. That's the only way it happens. The only way you find the finances. It's the only way you find the energy. It's the only way you find the will. It's the only way we encourage each other and support each other that this can be done. So let me just end this by saying, from one immigrant with blood from everywhere in the world other than where my home is right now, to all of the migrant blood in all of you, let's commit to a partnership here to really make a difference. And not just today, but this is going to take a while to figure this out. But stay with us, stay with the community. Solving this issue solves maybe the human dilemma of how we can live on this planet together in a successful way. Thank you very much.